Welcome to our post-launch news conference. Here's KSC Launch Director Bob Seek to tell us what kind of a day the launch team had. Bob?
Well, we had a good day. In fact, it was a great day and a good ending to a work effort that really began about a week ago when we went into the activity to change the component in the IUS. The payload, IUS, and the shuttle team did a great job of getting that hardware changed, retested, and getting us back into launch count in a timeline that really exceeded our expectations. And when we got into count, we had a good launch count. We got into tanking early today by about a half an hour, and we're ahead of our timeline all the way into terminal count. The only hardware problem we had to deal with was on the ground side, a valve, the replenish valve, specifically for our liquid oxygen system that's on the mobile launch platform. And it started leaking after we had been in replenish for a couple of hours, and the leak got to the point where we had to do something about it, so we stopped the flow to the tank, sent a team out there, a red crew, and they tightened up the packing on the valve, and we reestablished flow and got back into replenishing the quality of the liquid oxygen in the tank. And that was a factor in the timeline for the rest of the count, because you want to ensure that you have good quality liquid oxygen at the engine inlet interface to meet your engine start conditions. And normally it takes at least a half hour in replenish to do that. You like to have about an hour and a half. That gives you your maximum hold time capability once you start drain back, which is about 5 minutes. So we were watching that as we approached terminal count, and we also had a collision avoidance COLA with an orbiting spacecraft that was a factor about 5 minutes into the launch window. And we wanted to avoid that. So when we got into the hold at -9 minutes, we decided to extend that another 10 to 15 minutes. We picked 13 minutes to ensure that we had some hold time if we should need it after we started lock strain back and to get away from this COLA, as it were. The team was, of course, rewarded with a safe and successful launch, and that was a good reward not only for this effort, but as you look back over the year, at least this calendar year, we met the requirements for shuttle launches. Correct me on the numbers, but I think it was 6, and that's what the manifest called for. And the hardware we delivered to space for our customers, the people out there and the crews, met all the expectations. It was quality hardware, and it worked. And I hope it met all the expectations of those who support our effort. So a lot to be proud of. And as we look forward to Thanksgiving, a lot to be thankful for, too.
Thanks, Bob. Let's take questions this time. Wait for the mic, please. Give your name and affiliation. Harry?
Harry Colton, Aviation Week. Bob, what were the orbiting spacecraft that caused you to delay?
Well, I need to run the number. The first one, I believe, was the MER. We have to check that. There were 3 COLAs within our total launch window, and I think the first one was MER, but we'll confirm that.
Sue?
However, as long as I have the mic. Bob, would you like to tell us now when you're planning IML? Is it the 22nd of January, or?
The IML is still, well, our schedules still call for us to roll to the launch pad before Christmas with the next mission, and the 22nd is still the planning date, not an official launch date.
Thank you.
Ross?
Bob, have you got a Ross Capital Channel 9? You got a report back from the pad yet, the condition of the pad? A lot of people saw a lot of smoke.
Preliminary report is good from what we could see with all of our leak and fire detectors and the instrumentation that we have. There's the view out there, as you know, it's kind of spectacular with the xenon lights and all of the humidity that we have and the vapor, but we didn't detect anything out of the ordinary in terms of fires or leaks post-launch. Of course, we're sending the teams in now that it's safe, and we'll take a closer look.
Up front here, Jim.
Jim Banky, Florida State. Bob, what do you have to look forward to this week and getting ready for the Thanksgiving holiday with the workforce? And then What do you do for the rest of the year? You've got the long break at Christmas. What do you do between now and then?
Well, the near-term effort is to get Discovery with the space lab, the lab payload out of the OPF and through the VAB. And in that regard, Thanksgiving Day and the Friday are holidays. We won't work then at all. We may do some selected jobs on Saturday and Sunday on Discovery, and likewise Endeavour. Endeavour, we're going to continue the work that we're doing. Still don't have an official target for a rollout date for that one. The maximum effort, though, will be on Discovery. And the Christmas holiday period, the 10 days, it's still our plan to have our annual maintenance period there, where we'll refresh the aging facility systems and take down all of the air conditioning and the power, and also give the people a refresher.
Let's take one more question here before we go to NASA headquarters for a couple. John?
Bob, 6 flights this year under your belt. How would you characterize 1991 for the team here at the Cape and the shuttle program itself?
Well, from our perspective, it was an excellent year because that was our goal going into it, the missions. And we didn't make the exact launch date, but when you put it into a 12-month lump, we think it was excellent. If you look at the mission performance, notwithstanding the one that still has to be proven that's on orbit, but all that worked. They were safe missions. They were successful missions. The processing team here at Kennedy, in particular, demonstrated the capability to turn the orbiters around in less time than we had the previous year, and the same with stacking the solid rocket boosters. All the other indicators that management has to look at, overtime and expenses, all that reduced as the year wore on. So I think we gained a lot of ground, and we expect even more next year.
Do we have some questions at NASA headquarters?
Good evening from Washington, NASA headquarters. This is A.R. Hogan with at Astro Magazine, Writers Plus Newsroom. Couple questions. Could you explain why NORAD or U.S. Air Force or someone else didn't know about that possible collision avoidance problem before, just a few minutes prior to launch? Why that wouldn't have come up, a few hours or a few days earlier, please?
Well, it did come up a few days before, and you, as the orbit changes, you tune up the time, as it were, within the last few hours. And in fact, the last hour before the launch, we had a final adjustment of some 15 to 30 seconds. But the heads up was there days ago.
Okay, could you explain a little bit about the delicacies and intricacies of topping off the locks in the ET? There's a kind of a criticality there about not doing it too soon, not doing it too late, and you only have a few minutes leeway. Could you explain a little how that, why that is?
Well, the topping, the replenish of the lock system is once it's loaded, there's no tricks to it. You just like to make sure that you've conditioned the whole vehicle, the tank, and all of the plumbing to the engines to the point where the temperature is stable and is as cold as you can get it. What happens, and that normally takes, once you're into replenishment of the tank and that fluid is mixing, as it were, it takes probably anywhere from half an hour to an hour to get a good homogeneous mixture, density, high quality, uniform throughout those hundreds of thousands of gallons of liquid oxygen. And that same condition exists right at the engine inlet interface. If you stop that flow for some reason, which is what we had to do when we repaired the replenish valve, then, of course, the liquid starts heating up and you start getting the flashing off, as it were, and the quality changes in that mass. So in order to feel good that you've restored the quality that you want, you have to be back in the replenish and mixing that stuff up for a certain amount of time. A half an hour is the minimum that we would like to do it. And our data shows that once you've done that for an hour and 15 minutes or up to 90 minutes, you have the best quality liquid oxygen load that you can get with what we transferred from the storage sphere. Somewhere in between is what we were shooting for, and the parameter that it's key is the temperature at the engine inlet interface. Once that gets too hot, as it were, you can't start the engines. The computers will automatically lock you out of an engine start. And the condition we look for is that once we start draining back the liquid oxygen, which happens when we get inside of T-minus 5 minutes, then, of course, we're not replenishing anymore. So the temperature at the engine inlet interface starts heating up. And if we've got a good load of liquid oxygen on board, normally it takes about 10 minutes for that load to get to the point where the temperature at the engine inlet interface is out of what we call the start box, the red line. And that we found that once we've replenished for at least an hour and a half, that's fine. Anything less than that, your ability to hold after you've started drain back is diminished to the point where you have no hold, in fact. If you only replenish for 15 minutes or less than half an hour, you would only have 5 minutes of drain back capability, which is about the amount of time it takes to get from T-minus 5 to T0. So you get to T0 and you would be running a race with this red line, as it were. So that's why we like to hold or to replenish, as it were, at least 45 minutes, and we'd like an hour or a little more to maximize our hold time capability within 5 minutes if we should have to do that.
You're usually pretty diplomatic, so I'm not sure what you'll say to this, but do you see a certain irony, perhaps a bitter irony, in that NASA was criticized by those of us in the press corps and by the public for abandoning a decades-long tradition of openness for media and the public to see launches and missions during the secret military missions? And now it's not the Pentagon that's keeping the shuttle flight secret, it's the lack of press coverage that's keeping the missions in the dark. Is there a certain regretfulness that you see in that, please?
Well, I think the only thing that may be regrettable is that for the Department of Defense missions, obviously the performance of the shuttle and certainly the payload couldn't be shared with the people who really support those missions, which is the taxpayer and all the others. That may be regrettable, but I'm sure you all understand that's done for good reason.
Any additional questions from NASA headquarters?
But the other point is there a certain bitter irony now that the press is keeping the mission in the dark? The Pentagon's saying, well, okay, we're open to at least a large degree, but now the press isn't covering the missions very much. That's a question from Washington.
Well, I don't know. I'd say if they're missing covering the missions, then they're missing history, and if they choose to do that, so be it.
I'd like to give that questioner a head count. We had 350 press checked in down here to cover this launch.
Thank you.
Are we back here at KSC for questions?
Frank Notek for CBS Radio. Simple question to start with. Did you burn paint tonight?
I'm sure we did. We had a lot of fresh paint out there on the service structure, and I know Fred and the rest of the crew in one of their walk-downs made note of that, and I think they took care of it.
Hey, second question. Did those 3 or 4 guys who went to the pad to fix the valve tonight save the day for you? Was there any drama involved there? Were you concerned that this might cause another scrub tonight if they hadn't fixed it?
Well, if there wasn't any drama, the fact that they would do the work that was outlined on the valve, there was some concern that effort may not have been enough. If the valve had a crack in it or some type of structural problem, then we wouldn't have been able to make it. It turned out not to be the case.
Todd.
Todd Halverson, Florida Today. Bob, this was General McCartney's last launch as KSC director. I was wondering if anything special happened in the Launch Control Center tonight.
Well, I think, yes, something special happened. We all had a few words at the after MECO. Normally we remind the team that the high energy part of the mission isn't over until you shut down the engines and separate the tank, and then we have a few words from the dignitaries from Washington. Always Admiral Truly is here. And when General McCartney was introduced to say a few words, there was a standing ovation for some period of time. probably at least a minute, and I've been there for all the launches, and that's first.
Shirish?
This is Shirish Johnson with the Orlando Sentinel. Right at T0, a bunch of alarms went off, which were audible, I guess, throughout the launch complex area around here. Can you say what that was, or what caused that?
Not aware of the alarms. We always, all of our fire detectors at the pad that have not been deactivated go off whenever we have ignition. That's a standard thing. About any bells or whistles out here, I couldn't comment on.
Dan?
Bob, Dan Below, WESH-TV. A little more on the fix on the LOX valve. What kind of working conditions are there? Just looking on the camera there, it seemed like there was a lot of frost and very cold temperatures. Do you think that was difficult for the guys involved at all?
Oh, well, it was. The job is I mean, we could characterize it as a nut and bolt job, but it's a high degree of difficulty. It's cold around there. The lighting, fortunately, they were doing it in the daytime. But the technicians that were sent out there and the safety person, the engineer that accompanied them, they're well trained on the hardware. We have a briefing before they go to outline exactly what work is going to be done, and they know what the right tools are. They gather the tools, and they go and they did an excellent job, as they always have. Our Red Crew performance, we always like for it to take less time than it does, but when you look at the job and the criticality of it and the environment that the people are working in, I'd say that one was close to a perfect 10.
Craig?
Craig Smith, FLA TV out of Tampa. Back on the issue of what folks saw on the pad after the shuttle had already departed, a lot of people, myself included, saw what, from our perspective, appeared to be like an orange flame that went a good distance up the structure. Now, I know what you said about the fire detectors and so on. Is there anything else that would account for us seeing anything of that nature from our perspective?
I don't think so. I did not see the video that you watched, obviously. And the only way I could explain it would be the lighting and the water. Of course, the deluge system stays on for some minutes after the launch, and it's dumping water around there. The wind was out of the west at some 10 to 15 knots, and the combination of those effects may be it. But again, remotely, from the data we had available in the control room, we didn't see any out-of-the-ordinary leaks or fires.
The prevailing light out there is the xenon, which is white, correct?
Right.
To an orange.
Gentleman over here.
Bob Mark Harris, WPQ Radio in Jacksonville. When do you expect your pad team to report back to you?
They'll finish their walk down in a few hours, and from a safing standpoint, and then when it's daylight tomorrow, we'll do a more extensive review. We'll have initial indication of any damage by midnight.
Any additional questions? Frank?
I know we've looked back, but looking ahead to the New Year, sir, talk about perhaps the schedule upcoming and the upcoming launch of the new shuttle.
Well, it's hard to look at just one of them without looking at the whole plate, as it were. We have a robust year ahead of us. In fact, in the next 14 months, if you look at what's on the agenda, there's 12 flights in 14 months. 2 of them are with vehicles that will have recently returned from Palmdale, Endeavor and Columbia, which is out there now. And once they get into the fleet, the other 2 vehicles that have been doing the most flying, Discovery and Atlantis, will go down for extensive modification period, 6 months, and that'll be done here at KSC. So there's a lot of work to do, and we'll be tested on our ability to meet the schedule, to meet the demands with a quality product. But our challenge is to do that, but we're determined that we will. And as the schedule goes, we won't deliver a vehicle that's anything but ready to fly, whatever time that takes.
Beth?
Beth Dickey with Reuters. Bob, back to the flame at the launch pad.
Could that have just been the hydrogen
flare stack?
Well, the flare stack is still, yes, it's still burning off the residual from the T0. But that's, of course, east of the pad, some couple hundred yards. I can't speculate on it, didn't see it.
If we have no additional questions, I'll need to close this off with a commercial. Their video replays of launch will begin just about 5 minutes from now. That wraps us up. Thank you very much for coming.